Hi, I'm Jeremy at FiTech Fuel Injection, and today we're going to do a little Q&A with questions that we found on the internet. First question, it states, Happy New Year. It's from Gavin Bell. I'm having trouble starting my 302 after replacing the HEI distributor. Found a break on my alternator's field wire that runs into my circuit protection box. Would this interrupt the EFI drastically? Cheers. Well, I could say that if an alternator is failing and you're having trouble starting, it's drained your battery, and with the EFI systems, you do need to try to keep above 10 volts when the starter's cranking. If it gets below that, the injectors really have a hard time opening up against fuel pressure. So it might not actually be injecting any fuel even though it's trying. It just doesn't really know that it's not able to open the injector. I can't think of any other major reason, like if the alternator was sort of charging and not charging. If it was really ripply voltage, it could have caused another issue that would kind of cause the battery voltage to jump up and down, which can kind of cause some problems. The next question is, I have a 39001 Go EFI 2-barrel 400 horsepower system with the old style handheld. Does upgrading to the new one also allow any additional adjustment features or menu features? If you have the very old ones, we do have new software and a newer handheld. The newer handheld has some newer features. It's got like a little dash display kind of thing with some digital gauges. And it's a little bigger screen. There are a few functions that have been, I would say, improved as far as maybe accelerator pump and a few other minor ones. But the handheld itself does have its own improvements that kind of make it nicer. If you're running throttle body software on, say, T195, that's the oldest stuff, that would probably benefit a little bit from the newest stuff. 198 was a pretty common. We had a lot of production at T198. Now it's T210. It does have a few new things, and again, that handheld's a little bit better to work with. With a new handheld, and if you're updating the software, you'll have to go into ECU Programmer and program it. But before you do that, it's a good idea to use your old handheld, read a backup file for your calibration. That's read cal from ECU, that saves it into a backup file. Sometimes you can reuse that data. Sometimes with a big version jump, the data doesn't line up, so you can't quite just copy and paste it, but at least you can go back to it if you ever were questioning what changes you had done. But it is a good idea to also write down your settings for cubic inch, cam, any other changes you've made, like fan settings or accelerator pump, things like that. Just write it down so you can transfer it into the new calibration. You can go one by one on those if you want to, especially if you haven't done like a laptop software tune. Next question is, when do I adjust targeted AFR? What should I set it at? I primarily will use out-of-the-box settings when I'm trying to start and run a car. Idle AFR target is the one that is kind of engine dependent. If you have a very big cam, I'll often go much leaner on the idle AFR target. Like I could even be in the 15s plus to 1 on a big, huge, thumpy cam. And on a mild cam, if idle stability is a problem and I'm not doing timing control, I may find I have to go a little bit richer, like in the low 13s. I've never had to idle anything in the 12s. And if I was doing 16 to 1 or something like that, that would be for something like an open header system where I'm just trying to cheat just to try to keep it from adding a bunch of fuel, trying to make the whole air atmosphere around you at whatever airfield target. The bigger cams, leaner, that helps them idle cleaner for a lot longer time. If you tried to go richer, it would actually start to foul out the plugs because it's just getting a bad signal from all that overlap and backflowing and stuff like that. Full throttle, if you're in the 12.5s, 12.6s, that's considered a fairly safe AFR target. If you're in the boost, low 12s, high 11s, that's safe. If you've done anything like with E85, you can actually just use the gasoline AFR targets and either set your ethanol percent number up if you have the newer software with the ethanol percent, or you would kind of fudge it with cubic inch. If you make a bigger cubic inch, it will actually compensate for that extra amount of fuel that you would need with E85. E85 does need about 50% extra. If you're going for full kill on maximum power, you can lean it out at full throttle. That's the 95 kPa region. And if you set that into the high 12s or even low 13s, you might see a few horsepower. You just gotta be careful. The leaner will run a little bit hotter on everything. And just, do it carefully, do it with a dyno, and make sure you have enough octane. And as far as cruise regions, out of the box, it's in the low 14s. If you're really trying to squeak out the last bit of mileage, you can raise it into the mid 14s or high 14s. That would actually help mileage, but you may find it just starts to get a little bit rougher running, and if that's not comfortable for you, then you can keep it in the low 14s. All right, so do the injectors also have a 3-year warranty? That's the next question. Yes, they would if they're showing an electrical fault failure, but if they are clogged, that could be your fuel filtering system, and that wouldn't technically count for a warranty issue just because they're filled with dirt and they haven't failed. But the electrical faults, such as they continuously don't operate and they show faults when the harness is connected to it and it's still showing a fault, and you've isolated that it's that particular injector. All right, the next question is, what is my ECU saying? ECU not responding. Do you want to work offline? My grounds are good, power wires are good. When it's saying do you want to work offline, it means the handheld is not communicating with the ECU. Very often that's the cable is not properly inserted into the mating end on the harness. It could also be some other problem with a connection issue. It could also mean that your ECU is not turned on, so you don't have the key switch turned on. But if you do know that your ECU is on and you've checked the connection on both ends, but the handheld still lights up but doesn't communicate, it could indicate a failure in the handheld cable. It could also be a failure somewhere else in the harnessing. And it may take a little bit of diagnosing with replacing a handheld cable first. If that doesn't work, sometimes it's the handheld itself has maybe picked up some sort of problem. There are 2 plugs on the newer handhelds where you can try one or try the other. But do make sure that the key is on and that the cable is firmly connected on both sides. If the handheld's able to light up, that does mean it has power and ground, so that's not the problem. And if you know your ECU is turned on, such as if your engine is running or you can hear the pump turn on when you turn the key on and all that, then it's something along the communication, and it's usually the little stereo jack end where it's not fully seated into the connector. The next question we have is having problems with it turning fan on. It's not coming on and unable to save the temp settings. After you change it and send it, it will revert back to old settings, does not have calibration unlock option. So fan wiring is kind of a common confusion. The wire that we have, say the yellow wire on our throttle bodies, and I think it's blue and green on an LS, those are ground triggers for a relay's solenoid. So you have to have 12 volts coming in, I recommend from a key source into the 85, and then the 86 would come to our wire. Our wire would sense the temperature through the temperature sensor, and at the settings, it will above the turn on temperature, it will ground that wire. That grounding will activate the relay. The relay would connect battery voltage to your fan and fan to ground. The wire is not capable of actually running a fan by itself, so you can't just use it as like the fan's ground itself. That will send fault codes like crazy, and also some people already have relays that are wired in where it's meant to have a 12-volt signal turn it on, and then the other side's grounded. But if you just added our wire to that 12-volt side, it would be double grounded and it wouldn't activate the relay. So just remember, it's got to have a key in on 85 and a R wire on 86. That way, you know, when the key's on and the temperatures are high enough and the engine is running, it will activate that fan relay. There is also in the Handheld the ability to enable and disable the fans. So the fan setting has to be set to enable for that particular fan. And the temperatures, there's two of them, there's an on and an off. They should have a bit of a temperature split, so it's not just like on, cooling at a degree, off, cooling it, you know, heating a degree. And it can be problematic to have it cycling too often as far as the relay's longevity. Fans take a ton of current, so I recommend using, they do have 40 or 50 amp relays now, and don't use a breaker. The breakers tend to self heat up, and you know, they'll just trip and when it's hot, which is not good. You want it to be a high amperage fuse, because a fan turning on can hit 70 amps and then steady state out at like 25 amps. And a 30 amp relay is going to be really taxed with that, especially if you're cycling it on and off. The 50 amp relays, they can handle that 1 second of high amperage before they, you know, would end up having any kind of thermal issue. And I use maxi fuses, like 100 ampere on a fan circuit. You don't need that. You don't need that fuse on our trigger side. Just to have it on the main power, the 87 and 30, that circuit. So just be careful with that. If you're seeing that the Handheld doesn't save the changes, you do have to be careful that every change you make, let's say you've changed it by 3 degrees, you have to push OK while you're still highlighting that value. You'll see the send to ECU. On the newer Handhelds, there is a feature that can lock the calibration from any change, so you have to make sure that calibration's unlock setting is set to the proper setting. On our 16-bit stuff, that setting is disable, and on our new 32-bit stuff, you actually have to set it to enable. It's just to prevent calibration corruption stuff, but make sure that's set. Make sure your key switch is only activating the key and not activating or not cycling on and off the battery voltage. So if the battery voltage drops before you've turned the key off and let the ECU fully power down, any changes that you've just made don't get saved, because during that power down process, it's transferring your operating calibration down to the memory calibration. And so when it turns back on, it switches the memory, it copies from one to the other, and then when you power off after it shuts down, you'll see it's like a 10-second delay before it finally shuts down. It then copies everything back into the permanent memory. So if you've interrupted that process in any way, it won't actually save it. Those are the only ways to really not have it save, other than like if your Handheld's not actually communicating. But it's the calibration unlock, the key switch operation, pressing OK on every individual item. There are sometimes rounding things where, the code is written in SI units, but it's displayed in like Fahrenheit and whatnot. So sometimes things get rounded down a little bit, and that can kind of confuse. If you're just trying to change it 1 degree, it may be between 2 different Celsius breakpoints, and it'll keep rounding it back down to that 1 degree point. Hopefully I've answered these questions thoroughly enough, and if you do have more questions or comments, leave them in the comment below. We'll try to put your question in our next video.